this topic on ROI, on L&D initiatives, I'm sure this is something that is very critical, very important, and a lot of your business leaders would be asking this question. So you're doing this program. So what would be the ROI? How do you measure the ROI? When can you show me the ROI? So all these questions come up. So let's try to see how we could address as L&D professionals about ROI of learning programs. So with me today, I have Bhaskar from Amazon and Santosh. So the panel members for this, I'm sure we could get more insights on this topic. So, so let me ask both of them to look at it. When you design a program or when you say that a business needs a particular training program, how do you align this program keeping the ROI in mind? So maybe Bhaskar, you want to start? Yeah.
So I think for that it's also important to understand what ROI means for each of us. ROI would generally mean that how much investment you're making and what is the return that you're getting out of it. But in an L&D kind of an environment, it's a little difficult to mathematically say that this is how much we have invested and therefore this is how much we have got, this is the percentage return that we have got. Because it is not as statistical or as mathematically we can prove, there's a lot of different variables here. But what we can do, and at least what I have understood what we can do is that when we talk about ROI, it is about how are we adding value to the business? How can we demonstrate the effectiveness of what we have done in the training? And for that, in my experience in my organization, what we usually do is at the analysis stage itself, you try and determine what is the problem really well. If you have understood the problem, then you can decide at the end of it, how are you going to measure and showcase the improvement that you have brought into that problem. So I would say that for the ROI or for demonstrating the value, the most important thing is to start with the understanding of what the problem is first. If you have really understood the root cause of the problem, then you will be able to come up with certain metrics and that will show how at the end of the training you can go back and measure the improvement. So that's how I look at.
Okay, so good. So I think a very good point here. Identify the problem or the root problem that you would like to solve before designing the program as part of your program needs analysis or aspect of that, and then try to measure at a later point of time to check the effectiveness of that program. So Santosh, from your side.
Anyway, so I hope yep, I am. All right. So I was saying, it's not just about the eminent speakers that we have, but also the kind of individuals that I happen to interact with just a few minutes ago, right? Possibly an hour ago during our tea break. Now, what happens, everybody knows what happens on the ground, right? In terms of how you assess, how you go and execute, that's a different thing, right? But in this case, okay, like since morning I've been making these notes, right? In terms of when Gayatri started her speech, told us what exactly is happening. Ipsita gave me a few points in terms of, how she used to have Strava in terms of achieving the goals, right? But the initial point that goes on is the first and foremost that we look at, which is the primary note, I would say, is how do you, rather than assessing, rather than even going to that, the training need analysis or the training need assessment, the most important thing is how are you able to align these learning and development initiatives that you are about to put to that of the business goals that you have. For instance, we as a learning and development function, believe it or not, guys, and I'm not quite sure if you would really agree with me, but the fact remains the same that if you are from learning and development, you come with a conglomerate of skills. You can survive anywhere in any function. And you might say, Santosh, you're just saying it for the heck of it. Think about it. Think about it. If I place you in quality assurance, if I place you in finance, if I place you in any segment, as long as you're able to check your L&D initiatives, and then make sure that you're able to align the same thing with that of the business goals and vision that you have. Think about the amount of innovation. Forget about ROI for the first case, because in this case, we're talking about a nodal innovation here. Out here, if you're able to compare this, if you're able to align these, right? Now think about when these initiatives starts getting executed on the ground, how would you be able to start driving your ROI in terms of the implementation, right? Now, how you drive your ROI, what are the various measures that you have in terms of assessing them is a different thing. But for me, my learned colleague said, okay, how you want to start it, right? But the very primal need is you got to look into, assess your functional initiatives, and then start looking at how can you align them to the business goals. If you are able to successfully achieve this, I think I can 100% say that your ROI, I wouldn't say would be like a huge amount of savings, but I think you've taken your first step towards a successful ROI. That's all I have.
Good. I think very important and a very valid point in terms of identifying the business goals or the KPIs for the particular business unit or the function unit, and ensuring that your training programs are aligned to that particular business goals as a first step, and then continuing to look at how to deliver the ROI or the implementation of that. So I think
just before you go next, Sandesh, just Karthik, I want to add just a continuation of what he said. I'll just share with you my experience. My first job, I was working as a sales officer with Procter & Gamble, and one of my managers there gave me a very important learning, and in fact it relates to what he said. He said, it doesn't matter which domain you are working in, whether you are in sales, whether you are in HR, whichever domain. He said, if you have to succeed in whatever you do, you need to understand your customer's need first. If you understand your customer's need, then whatever solution, right? And it's so much true for our learning also, right? If I understand what my business need is, what is the problem they are facing, what will help them, then I go to them with a solution which will help them. It is not about what I have, it is about what they need, right? That's how I can justify the ROI, when I can showcase to them that I am trying to help you solve your problem. It's not about I want to do this, it's about what is important for them. And if I understand my customer, in Amazon we do say this, one of the leadership principles we have is called customer obsession. It says first understand from the customer's point of view. Think on behalf of your customer. Start thinking on behalf of your customer, and ROI becomes very easy. Okay. Sorry.
Thanks, Bhaskar, for that input. So now the question is, once you have identified the business KPIs or the needs of the users or the needs of the functional units, and then you're trying to align your training programs. This next question comes in terms of what is the approach of measuring the ROI, or how do you measure the ROI?
I can take this up. So approach, the approach that you initially have in terms of measuring your ROI, let's start with the basics, right? Let's just say if you want to measure your basics, right? First and foremost is the one that you have. Everybody, like I said, everybody knows this. We are just trying to reiterate the facts. Number one is your pre-training and your post-training assessments. That is your number one factor where you can start going ahead and see, hey, you know what? This is where you were. Thanks to my training, this is where you are. Now, in the training world, that is what you call as efficacy, right? Your training efficacy is, the last time I had got about, say, let's just say we're talking about a small percentage where I happen to see that people who were not performing good were at, say, 15%. Okay, now 15%, I'm talking about the number. When I talk about a percentage, and I said, okay, by the end of the day, after about 1 week of training, I got them to 4%. If you look at my efficacy at that point in time, I'm looking at a 64.3% efficacy on the ground. Can you imagine a number like that in terms of efficacy being built up in front of the client or your bosses? Or for example, I'd say more than that, I would say your functions, those ESG, service teams, delivery teams, whom you want to convince, your leadership groups that you want to convince, and say, you're not even showing them what is going to happen, you're just showing them the numbers saying, in just about a week's data that I have in terms of training your individuals, I was able to get this efficacy to 64.3%. Imagine the amount of, I don't know, the kind of faces that you can imagine. The reason why I say this, guys, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, is initially when Srini asked the question saying, how exactly do I get this ROI, right? Okay, that I had this similar point. How, I think most of us, I mean, Deepa might have been a success story out here, but in my case, I was a failure, believe it or not. When I wanted to go ahead and I said, all right, can you please invest in this particular platform that I want to do? I know I have got amazing results, but nobody was ready to believe me because it was only words. There were no numbers. But when it comes to learning and development now, everything is possible with two things. One is informed decision making, which you're making because the most important part is you've got data. So your informed decision making and data driven decisions that you're taking right now form the crux of it. So if I'm talking about number one, the efficacy, the second thing that I'm looking at is how can I start assessing things. Initially, I was just looking at the same sheet, right? Be it a Gayatri, be it Ipsita, be it the n number of panelists who happen to speak out here, right? Many said, you know what, Gayatri said there was something called Ocean, where people are being assessed on a particular platform. The second one is recognition. Can you even believe, I mean, just try and understand. If you see, if recognition is, if you think is the end result of a particular learning and development program, think again. Recognition is an investment that you're making in making sure that your program is a success. Think about it, right? I think I can go on in terms of paradigm shift that I have. I can quote my own example in terms of how I was a director at one point in time in terms of consumer learning services. Then I happened to change my field, so on and so forth. Everything is possible. I'm just trying to support this particular fact that when it comes to learning and development, anything and everything is possible. And coming to your question, sir, at this point in time, your efficacy, your pre and post assessments in terms of, again, going ahead and making sure that you're continually evaluating. A few of the panelists also said, you know, you can't stop at one place. You've got to keep evolving. You've got to keep ensuring that you continuously evaluate these performers in terms of seeing where their scores are. I mean, these are a few steps from what I understand. I mean, at least 2 to 3 steps that I have.
The poll is live specific to this topic. I just requested to everyone, just spend a 30 seconds to vote, and possibly after 10 minutes I'll publish the results, and then we can do brainstorming based on the results as well.
Sure, sure. Okay,
the poll has been published. I'll publish the result in 10 minutes.
Okay, good.
We can continue. We can take the question from audience as well.
Fine. Okay. So, Bhaskar, your thoughts on how do you, the approaches and how do you want to, what are the approaches for looking at getting the ROI and measuring the ROI? Yes.
It certainly is not a one-size-fits-all. Measuring the ROI, as I said, it depends upon the need of the business. Right? Sometimes the needs are very simple. Simple in the sense there is a problem with the productivity. It should be X. It is X minus something, and you want to bring it back to X. So it's a very simple ROI, right? Or a quality score being low and you want to improve it. But in an L&D environment, our problems are sometimes much more ambiguous than that, because our business itself does not know what problem they have. I would look at it this way. Probably I was talking to you over the break also, that the primary job or the role of an L&D team is to build people capability so that business can succeed, right? Or it can achieve its goals, it can achieve its future aspirations. L&D is also responsible to support individual employees to succeed, to achieve their own personal ambitions as well. In this kind of an environment, it becomes very difficult to measure how you are actually supporting or helping the business overall, right? There are different ways in which you can do. For example, in my team currently, we are tracking participation rate is one of it. We look at the percentage of employees that are participating in the programs. We look at NPS, which is equivalent to similar to what we have the level 1 of Kirkpatrick. In fact, we went a step ahead. We said rather than only measuring NPS of the learners, we are now asking the NPS questions to the managers of the learners. about a month after the training, so that we get to understand whether the learner has started demonstrating some of the behaviors in their on-the-job situation. That has given us a much more application level insight. We also look at, there are different programs. For example, we do some academies where we are preparing people for certain roles. So the transition of people who have passed out of the academy into the role, that's a measure of success for us there. But in overall, in fact, this problem of value has been there for a very long time. But when I joined my new role about 8 years back, my manager at that time challenged me with this question, that you have to come up with some ROI that you will be able to demonstrate to everyone. It took me a long time. There were so many things that you do. But 2 years back, I launched something called as a People Capability Score. Now, how did it come about was, as I said, the role of a L&D team is to build capability in the organization, people capability in the organization. There's a core function that I'm responsible for. So I need to be able to report back to the business and tell them that, hey, this is how I'm building capability in your teams. That's where this idea of People Capability Score came in. We defined critical competencies, functional competencies, behavior, all put together. We said that these are the 6 competencies that are important for our organization. That should be there in every member of the organization. We are a 9,000 member org, which is spread across multiple locations worldwide. And for each of these competencies, we define various skills in that also. What we do is we go back and do a survey of all the managers and ask them to rate their team members on these skills. There are some rubric given to them which helps them to rate their team members. This gets aggregated into a score. It can be at a team level score, it can be org level score, it can be score for the manager, it can be score for the business unit. I can slice it the way I want to. This also helps me to tell the organization, the leaders, that on this particular competency we are lower than what we should be. We are able to take a target every year on that competency rating. This has actually helped me quite a lot in terms of reporting back the value that we bring to the organization. When I'm talking to the leaders, now I use this score as a important metric now. These are some of the things that we are doing. And as I said, it's not one size fits all. You'll have to look at the need of the business, understand, and then come up with what is the right metric to report the effectiveness.
There's one question.
Bhaskar, just a quick question. The capability score that you're able to identify, is that a periodic exercise? And then how do you motivate your learners to take that periodic assessment?
Yeah, that's a difficult part. So initially we started doing it once in a year. But then our leader said once in a year is not good enough for me. It doesn't give me on a live check of how my organization is on health, right? So he wanted to do more frequently. He said you should do it every month. So we actually developed a tool for doing this survey, more like an app, which props up a question to you in Amazon, right? So you know something like connections, which every day it pops up one question. It's like an engagement tool we have. Every day it pops up one connection. Similar to that, we have made it once in a month, where it will pop up. It will study one competency. It will survey one competency for every month, and so it's more like it's almost live, I would say. In terms of participation, and that's very tough. We usually get about 55 to 60% people participating, though, which is satisfactory. Yeah. Yeah. So what we have done is these competencies, 6 competencies we have decided, and each of the 6 competencies, the skills we have mapped it to roles. So there are 23 unique roles. So for each of this role, we have defined what skills are there under that competency, and that differs by level. So that way, our questions are on that skill and for that level. So when I'm sending a survey to the manager, it is for their employees. It is targeted for their employees. It's not a generic survey. Possible. It depends upon, for example, if I have a business analyst in my team, I also have a program manager in my team. I also have some operations associate. So the surveys would be 3 different surveys that I get.
Yeah, there's one question from Kandasani.
I understand how you are working upon that capability score and how you are presenting it to the new. I'm trying to connect how you are translating it into an return on investment. That I am unable to relate. Probably I missed it.
So in the Kirkpatrick, there are these 4 levels, and the 5th one is your ROI, right? Okay. The ROI is, I mean, if you want to calculate ROI investment versus the return and say how much percentage you have achieved, it can be done, but it's a very, very difficult exercise to do, which you can't do every time. So what we are saying here, ROI is, how am I adding value to my business? I'm not saying that, okay, this much I have invested and therefore this much I have got written. I'm not talking about the percentage return that I've got here. Right? It's possible to do, but it takes a lot of effort because there are so many variables involved here, and there may be many other initiatives that are happening in the business, and it's very difficult to claim entitlement to say that it is because of my initiative that this particular change has come in. Right? So therefore, what we do the next best is, how am I adding value to the business is what I'm looking at. And this people capability score helps me to demonstrate that this is how I'm improving your people capability.
Yeah.
Does it answer?
Yeah, this helps. The other question I had is, throughout this ROI discussions, we were speaking about, it was all training centric. It's not about L&D services. Probably it could be a library service, or it could be a portal content platform which we are extending to our associates. So in all those cases, how do we calculate ROI? Any thoughts on that if you have?
Okay, so it is all encompassing. So when you look at whether it is when you look at the whole L&D program, the investment that you make in the terms of the program is including the infrastructure, the hardware, the course creation or the course license fee or whatever it is, and the investment made by the instructor and by the participant. So for what is the investment in terms of the effort that has gone inside, and the outcome in terms of the outcome could be in terms of revenue or in terms of profitability or in terms of improvement, or those are the types of things, and that's how you will calculate the return of investment. So return of investment is just not only on a program, it includes all the aspects of the whole L&D elements of L&D. Yes, that could be the outcome. Employee retention is the outcome. Whether, say for example, if you investment that you are making in your LMS or LXP, that's an investment across several programs. You might have to apportion that hardware cost for the particular program. Cost of creating of the program, cost of conducting that program, that all goes into the cost of the whole program as such. And then the return of investment in terms of the outcome. That could be in terms of, there are various methods of looking at the outcome, whether it could be anecdotal or systematic. Like as Bhaskar mentioned, when he has say NPS. NPS could be one of the measures, and the way it's been done is basically conducting a survey, which is an anecdotal method. The way it can also be done is in terms of systematic approach. So it could be for this particular program, if there is a billing rate increase after 3 months, after 6 months, that is in direct correlation with your program as such. So that could be your return of investment. For every dollar of investment I am making in this program, what is the return of investment in terms of the billing rate? That could be from an IT perspective. So from a compliance perspective, it could be the number of tickets, incidents in a manufacturing factory. That in turn results into profitability and others. That's how you look at it. Yeah, so we just saw the results in terms of, I think there was 2 points, one on net promoter score and another one was on change in knowledge or skills. In fact, that's the question I wanted to ask. So, how do you attribute that a particular program or a particular initiative is contributing to the ROI? How do you assign that, so I did a compliance program. By just doing this compliance program, can we say that the number of tickets have reduced, or number of compliance, or number of legal compliances come down, or anything of that sort? How do you assign an attribute to that particular program?
I think if the problem is already identified, known, and it's a straightforward problem, then you can very clearly attribute a training's outcome to the result. For example, like you said, if there is a concern related to compliance, and I'll give this example. About 5-6 years back in our organization, we were hiring mostly freshers, and we had this problem. A lot of HR issues used to come because they're fresh from the campus. They do not know how to conduct themselves in the office. They would still behave like a college student in the office. So a lot of HR issues that used to come. So the HR and we decided that we should start a program for, you have this campus to corporate kind of programs, right? So that kind of a program we started, and we ran it for about 6 months continuously, and we ensured that every new hire went through that. And over a period of about 5-6 months time, we could very clearly see a dip in the HR issues that were coming up. So these kind of problems which are very direct, simple, you know that this is the problem that you are trying to solve, and for that purpose you have developed a program, you can very well correlate and claim entitlement for the entire thing. But there could be others where it's much more complex, like your leadership programs, right? Or program management programs that you've done. And then you say, I did this program management program, and because of which my program management effectiveness has improved. It's a little difficult to claim because there might be many other initiatives which are happening. So if you want to do that, then you need to actually identify what all initiatives are happening, how much investment has gone to my program, how much investment has gone into each of the other initiatives that have happened, and then claim the ROI for that also.
Bhaskar, I have a question, and more than a question, it's a continuation of what you were saying, and I completely agree that even if you were to kind of look at the Kirkpatrick way, and as the answer says, right, if there is a problem that has been identified and there is a training that is rendered, then it's obvious, right? In case of compliance, the numbers would reduce, right? Errors would go down. And just as you said, it's a function of the attribute that we are trying to look at. In case of leadership, it's not impossible. That's where the behavior changes will show. So if I am kind of going for a training which is about working with more and more people or being collaborative, I've done the training maybe over a period of 3 months, people would come back and saying, okay, you know what, Archana seems to have improved, right? So, but coming to the thing that you were talking about in terms of how are we adding value to the client directly, right? So I would say that it's a combination of multiple things, and mostly to do with a lot of culture change also, right, in the organization. Yeah, that's.
As I said, I mean, it depends upon the complexity of the problem.
Yeah.
The more easy the problem, the more easy the ROI calculation is. The more complex the problem, the more difficult it will be. Just another thing on behavior also, as you correctly said, we can always measure it. I mean, we can always go back about 3 months later. We can do a pre and post also. Before the program, you take a 360-degree survey of the learner, and after probably 3 months or whatever time it takes, as per your calculation, for that person to start demonstrating their behavior, go back and again measure and see what is the difference, and you can claim value for that.
Okay, just last 3. Sir, just in the interest of time, just the last 3 rapid. For new.
I can give an example there. Currently in my organization, I'm running, I started this with one academy. We started this because we had actually come up with a new role in the operations, where our leader expected this operations person to have technical skills to develop automation, have data skills to work on analysis, and also have program management skills so that they can work on problems. Okay, so this was very difficult because how do you build all of this into one person? So we decided to develop an academy, which was a 6 months long academy where these people were pulled out of their jobs, put into this training, and for 6 months after that they had to go through internship. It became actually, we had experimented this for 6 months, then it became actually a 1-year program because we realized that just classroom training isn't enough, so we give them internship. So after 1 year, then we moved them into these roles. Not everyone moved into those roles. Some of them decided to pursue different career paths also, but then the skills were developed. They were taught Python, they were taught SQL, they were taught machine learning. So even when they moved into their operations roles, their ability to work with different solutions improved quite a lot. So fungibility can be.
So just maybe the last rapid fire round, just 2 questions to both of you. In terms of the first question is ROI always related to profitability, or is it related to revenue, or is it both? Just a single word answer.
It's both.
Both. How about you?
Oh, there's many more
Okay,
things.
both. So now, with the advent of Gen AI, do you think that the ROI of training programs will increase exponentially?
It will. It will.
Yes, no?
It does. Just wanted to add one thing, right? When you're talking, I mean, since morning we've been talking about one thing, and that was Gen Z, right? But more than anything, I'm a millennial, right, by the end of the day. But more than one thing that I wanted to look at is our programs, which you're asking, I'm just trying to add a little bit to it, is that our programs in terms of L&D have evolved to an extent where we are not just attending to or catering to the needs of Gen Z, but we are also catering to the needs of Gen Alpha. I'm not quite sure how many of you are, can relate to this term, but we are talking about Gen Alpha, where people or those, I can't even call them people, right? They are kids below 13 years of age. Okay, and they are called Gen Alpha, and at this point in time, if you look at the evolutions that are happening around, right, like Bhaskar sir, rightly said, the kind of evolution that we have is these people are studying or learning Python from 5th standard, which as a millennial, I never ever dreamt of, right? Now, our programs that we are looking at, like you rightly said, sir, we are looking at training them using our standards as a 12-year-old kid to get up to speed in terms of what we are about to achieve. Now think about the ROI that you would get if you are training an individual like that. I mean, the answer is quite evident. I don't even need to ask you that question, but think about it. What is it that you're getting when you're actually assimilating or trying to imbibe an ROI from a Gen Alpha? So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. So I think that's it from our side. Thanks, the panelists. I think we can take the questions during lunchtime. I think it's already 1:45. So thanks, Bhaskar, and thanks, Santosh. So with the topics on innovation and Gen AI and a lot of things that are innovating in terms of new programs, I think the ROI will exponentially increase. So I think you can all go back and tell your business managers that invest in training programs, we will show the ROI for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.